Welcome, everyone. We're happy to be part of this panel discussion as part of the 2021 spring meeting of the Pulp and Paper Advisory Board at North Carolina State University. I'm Ronnie Heiss, and I'm pleased to be joined by Cindy Hendren and Bill Danley. First, a little bit about my background. I'm a Texas A&M graduate from 1979. I went to NC State for the Paper Science and Engineering program and got a master's and PhD, finishing in 1984. I worked for WestRock for 29 years in a number of locations and roles, and started my own consulting company about 7 or 8 years ago. Worked mainly with Bonanza Associates in the area of smart manufacturing and predictive modeling. And at this point, I'm enjoying my time volunteering at North Carolina State. I was a past president of the advisory board, and I'm enjoying 2 grandchildren with one on the way, due in April. So Cindy, why don't you tell us a little about yourself?
Cindy Hendren. I am currently the mill manager of our Henderson, Kentucky mill. Work for International Paper. I am a NC State Pulp and Paper and Chemie graduate, class of 2005. I have worked for IP since I graduated from college. I've worked in a number of roles, from frontline leader to MME, which is a manager of manufacturing excellence, powerhouse business unit manager, and now in the Henderson, Kentucky as the mill manager. I am a wife and a mom of 2. I have a stepdaughter who's 11 and she lives in northern Alabama, and then I have a little boy who's 4 that's just had his first big snow of his northern life here in southern Indiana is where we live. So glad to be here. I currently serve as the president of the Pulp and Paper Advisory Board, and glad to be with y'all and look forward to sharing my experiences with you.
My name's Bill Danley. I've got a bachelor's in mechanical engineering from Georgia Tech. I'm not an NC State alum like everyone else on the panel, but I won't hold that against you. Currently, I'm the global business line manager for ABB's Pulp and Paper Group. I started with ABB in 1987 in their Pulp and Paper Group, and ABB, most people may or may not realize as a student yet, that we make a great deal of equipment used by the pulp and paper industry. Our global pulp and paper team is about 2,000 people. And we have 2 manufacturing facilities that make equipment specifically for the industry across a diverse range of products.
First, I'd like to start with a question for the 2 of you. What are the mega trends that will impact new engineers entering our industry?
I think one of the big things that I've seen, IP's been focusing on it, for at least a decade, if not longer, but it continues to be a big focus. I think as I sit on the Pulp and Paper Advisory Board, I know that it's not just IP, it's industry in whole, is really how do we make sure that we have a diverse population, that we've got plenty of women, plenty of minorities, plenty of different thoughts and ideas to bring us forward and to make us innovative and creative. And so that's a big part of our process as we're recruiting is what are we doing to make the industry more attractive to women and minorities and just to good engineers all the way around. So another focus, I think that certainly anybody who's been in the industry for, let's say, 20 years or more would say that was not a focus 20 years ago is work-life balance, and really making sure that that the company gets what it needs, but also that its employees are getting what they need to be fulfilled, and making sure that our employees are balanced and our managers are balanced, that we've got a good look on our own life, being healthy, having healthy family situations, and knowing that what's happening outside of the mill impacts how we perform on a daily basis, and really makes us want to work for a company that we know cares about us and takes care of us and wants the best for us. And so it is not easy. We are certainly have lots to learn and lots of road to go, but we're talking more and more about what it is to balance work-life. I heard somebody say it's work-life integration. So I definitely agree with that. It's really, as a company, trying to figure out what that looks like. And I think as individuals trying to figure out what that looks like and helping our employees figure out how to balance the responsibilities of their life as well as the responsibilities of the workplace.
Some great points, Cindy. Thanks. I hope you get some good questions on those points. So, Bill, how about you?
When I sat down to do this, I was like invited to do this last year when it was going to be in person, and I started making a few notes. And this question really hit home because I looked at my notes from last year, and while they were still relevant, they were accelerated. And so this mega trend we're seeing really is a mega trend, and it's come on because of COVID much faster. And what we were seeing even last year in my notes, but much more so this year, is this trend towards autonomous operations. And we call it remote workplace, or an individual, we call it remote workplace. But if you're running a paper mill, it's an autonomous operation. We've had requests of how do I run a paper mill without having anybody here, or very few, or much fewer people, and we're enabling that. It's not something that's new. We've been doing this for many years in the oil and gas industry, offshore platforms. Why do you fly people out to a platform? Leave the operators on shore. We've been doing it, but the paper industry was just coming around to this. So this trend of autonomous operations, where the key people, the engineers in particular, the ones doing the optimization, and the engineers looking at all the data that's coming out of the paper mill, don't necessarily have to be there. And so that's an enabling technology of that is all the digital science and the capabilities we have to extract data from a mill, bring it into an enterprise location, work on it, bring it into our operations where we can provide expertise to help paper mills. And the COVID brought this on, and where we were initially talking about an autonomous operation, maybe some remote support, we're starting up paper machines now without sending hardly any people to site. We'll have whole teams sitting around bringing on new lines. And this is an incredible leap forward. And it's done a couple things. One is what Cindy mentioned about work-life balance, because there's two sides to every coin. When you can run a paper mill from anywhere in the world, you can have people that have work-life balance, because I can be a shift operator and only work a shift during the day because I'm helping out on a mill that's somewhere in the world. If I, as a process optimization expert, I can work day shift, and or if you're a mill at night and you need somebody during the day, it may be halfway around the world, and that's some of the things we're doing right now. So it's really changing that work-life balance. How does this impact a young engineer? You don't necessarily have to live where you work anymore. Maybe you do initially. I heard Cindy's bio and Ronnie's and mine. I made 6 moves before I was 32. And this is really, I think, something that may not happen as much in the future. And these type of opportunities are only becoming available now because of this autonomous approach to doing everything. And it's also opening up, I think, what Cindy talked on about diversity enablement. But whether it's racial diversity or gender diversity, the ability to work from anywhere has been impacted because so many people have that a social infrastructure that they depend on. Whether you're coming from a city or a town where your family is, or you establish one with that first or second job, you get married, you have children. Being able to pick up and move to that next opportunity to grow in your career is a challenge. But these remote autonomous operations, the data analysis, and the optimization can be done from anywhere. So this enabling technology and this shift really is going to help our ability to attract and retain diverse talent. So I see that as a very positive aspect. Not saying you won't have to move, but it hopefully will reduce the amount of relocation and jumping around a young engineer usually has to do.
Just a brief comment that I spent some time working in some ethanol plants. And as you said, with the oil and gas industry, they're already there. I mean,
Yes.
it's highly automated compared to most paper mills that I'm familiar with. So anyway, very interesting. Well, that's a good lead into the next question I'd like you to address. And that is, how have the expectations changed regarding new engineers joining your company?
As I mentioned, the change in the requirements for frequent or initial relocations may be reduced, but one of the expectations I think that's going to come around is what we're looking for, because more so, even if you go to an office location, you come to our pulp and paper group in Ohio, more likely than not, you're still going to be remotely located many days of the week. And what we're seeing is we need people that really are self-motivators. Traditional jobs, especially as a new engineer, would put you in an office. You're surrounded by peers, new hires. You have mentors. You have your boss. You have management. And those people, while you may not realize it, are there supporting you. Anytime you feel you have a question, there's somebody to turn to. And the challenge is going to be if those people aren't around you. And I know even within ABB, of course, we get training about how to help our employees and motivate them. And one is this loss of belonging, loss of family, your work family. And that's why it comes back to looking for people that are self-motivated, because if you get down or if you get stuck, there's nobody to turn to except yourself. So that, to me, that's a characteristic that's going to be very important as we move forward.
Great. How about you, Cindy?
I think there's always been an emphasis on safety, but I think where TIR is your target TIR for a 500 or 600 employee mill used to be keep your TIR below 1.0. Now the expectation is go a full year with no injuries, or go. So just being fully engaged and fully encompassing all aspects of safety is a huge part of what we need. And our engineers that are coming into non-autonomous paper companies, because there's still a lot of machines that we need people in the mill to operate. But also I think there's an expectation of just a comfort around technology, around computerized control systems. We understand that most of y'all grew up with the phone at a very early age, right? Where really cell phones were just kind of becoming popular when I was learning to drive, right? That was kind of the trigger for when I got my phone, was when I could drive and leave my parents. And now we've got like these massively complex computers that are in the palm of our hands. And so the expectation that engineers come in embracing technology and data analytics and high, and a lot of y'all are seeing that in college, and that's just not something that was happening 10 years ago. And there's definitely a need for that, an expectation that you're able to come in knowing how to do data analytics, knowing how to draw conclusions from the data. So I will tell you that's one really important tool that you'll need to do, is not just know how to pull the data, but to be able to extrapolate information from that data and share that information and those conclusions with your managers. And then I think there's also an expectation, or more of an expectation, to have Lean Six Sigma thinking and potentially having studied it in school, and the ability to go in and think through Lean systems and 5S and Six Sigma and really apply those to the mill to make equipment that may be 100 years old run leaner. run more efficiently and make the tasks that we are doing on the machine more fluid.
Okay, great. Again, some very good points. Well, so let's kind of change to the other side of things. You talked about characteristics that engineers need to have coming into your organization. Can you comment on some things that are missing as you think about recent hires or recent interviews and so on? Are there some skills and areas of expertise that you think need to be addressed that are lacking or would improve their chances with your company? And Cindy, your turn to go first.
Yeah, so I've already touched on the major computer that you have in the palm of your hand. Well, it's got some awesome benefits, but one of the benefits or one of the drawbacks is that there seems to have been a loss of ability to verbally communicate and correspond and really have casual conversations with your operators. So when you get out in the management world, what you're really going to realize is that everything you do is based on relationships. And relationships start with conversations like, hey, my name's Cindy. I'm a mom, I'm a wife. This is what I do for fun. And asking them what they do for fun and banter back and forth and fluid conversation. And there's something beautiful about not trying to go Google all your answers, right? But going into a control room and telling an operator that you're trying to learn the process, that you've already traced these lines out, or you've gone and looked at this equipment, would they mind explaining more to you? Operators love to be needed and they love to share what they know. And so just building those relationships so that when you go into the control room to talk to them, right, they're already your buddy, and then they share that information that they know, and you learn it in a different way than you can read on a Google search.
Okay. Bill, what about you?
I'm glad I put backup points because Cindy, I think, was reading my notes. That is the biggest thing, communication. I wrote down that it's like a skill. If you don't use it, you lose it. And I'm not saying that the new generation doesn't have a communication skill. Just remember that it needs to be practiced, whether that's written, verbal, texting, SMS, tweets, whatever it is. Learn every day to do a better job of communicating. So I have a backup note I'll put in instead of that one. The one characteristic, one thing to look at is curiosity. And curiosity is key moving forward. When I got out of school, it was you were a smart person, you knew a lot, and you learned a lot from people around you. But more so today, because of the explosion of information, and as I said, you look it up on Google, curiosity. If you get stuck, a curious person is the one that's going to solve the problem. And the other part to remember is exactly what Cindy said, is we can't disassociate ourselves and just look at these things as numbers. I talked about autonomous operations and clouds of data and data lakes and analytics and all those things, but we can't disassociate ourselves from the fact that there is an operator sitting there in a room, and there is a machine. It's rotating, turning 24 hours a day. It's vibrating, it's pulsing with a heartbeat. And we have to remember that when we're looking at the data. And so that gets back to the curiosity to dive into what you're looking at, understand the numbers. I've sat down, I don't know how many times over the last few years, where these consulting companies come in and they want to partner with us on a data analytics problem. And first thing they ask for is our data set. And what we find out, they have no idea what that data represents. And it's a paper machine, it's a pulp mill. And they come back with some really interesting suggestions on how we can optimize things. And we're like, guess you've never been to a paper mill, have you? So curiosity will carry you through so many problems and make you a valuable person throughout your entire career.
Can I add one more point?
Absolutely.
one other thing that I'd tell you is not to be afraid of responsibility. And I know that that sounds strange, but as I have managed more and more young engineers, I've managed a number of engineers that are afraid to take on leadership roles because they're afraid of being responsible for other people's safety, or they're afraid of being responsible for having to teach and develop people to get them ready for the next roles. And what I would just encourage you to do is embrace that, right? Is embrace your ability to impact other people. Embrace the fact that you can work really hard to help your folks figure out how to do things in a safer way. That you can drive them to think about the family they're going home to make the decisions that they might not otherwise make. And likewise, use those same motivators to help them as you're developing them and challenging them in ways that they may not have been comfortable doing in the past.
Okay, good point. Well, we're almost out of time, but I have one more question for you, and I'm a little bit off script maybe, but as you think about, again, sort of the flip side of that, there are, one of the things you and I have heard, Cindy, from new engineers is, I've been here 2 years, I should be in charge of things now. So do you have any last comments for each of you that kind of help set expectations for, you know, when you come into our organization, here's what your career path might look like? So
Cindy, would you like to go ahead?
Sure. I think at International Paper, a lot of times what your career path is going to look like is, you know, 12 to 24 months a lot of times as a process engineer, getting your feet wet, learning the mill, learning the process. It could be shorter if you've had co-ops and other opportunities, but typically we don't move many people out before 12 months. Moving into a frontline leader position, so kind of that shift supervisor, rotating, right? Sounds really awful. It's really not. It is absolutely one of the best jobs you're going to have, not because you're on a rotating shift, right? But because you learn how to make decisions at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because when you know it's maybe maybe you're just slightly uncomfortable making that decision, but you know you don't want to call your boss and have them make that decision at 3 o'clock in the morning, because it's something you should be able to do. Each time you make one of those decisions, you're going to grow more and more and more comfortable making bigger and bigger decisions. So it's also the first time you're going to directly be responsible for people, and you're going to learn how to build those relationships, how to engage your employees, how to challenge respectfully, how to be challenged, whether they do it respectfully or not, and how to deal with it when they don't do it respectfully. And so it's a lot of learning in that frontline leader role. And so I really encourage y'all to try and embrace that, even though it may seem a little scary to work shift rotation. Then most people move into like an operations maintenance coordinator role, where they work out of the operations department, but closely with maintenance to try and figure out when to take equipment down and how to take it down and what to work on. You know, you may move into a technical assistant or an area manager type role, then on to a business unit manager, where you're running an entire department and you have multiple managers working for you. And each position, I would just challenge you not to think about what comes next, but to think about, what am I supposed to learn while I'm in this role? And how can I be the very best manager while I'm in this role, the very best leader while I'm in this role? And how can I make an impact every single time I walk in the door? You know, with IP, we have lots of people that move roles frequently, and sometimes the employees just think, man, if I can just outlast this person, right, we'll go back to the way it used to be. And you know, my big thing has really just been being that impactful leader and really asking them to challenge me and working as hard as I can while I'm in that role to make things happen and change things for the benefit of that department or that mill or that team. And it's really helped me a lot in my career.
Great. Bill, how about you?
Similar thoughts that essentially it's a career path. I'm a hiker, and I guess that's why it's in the mountains, the path is never straight, and that's what a career path is. It's not straight. It's not straight to the top. It takes many different changes. Most of those changes are lateral. Cindy mentioned many of those in a mill. We're a supplier to the paper industry, and it's the same here. A lot of lateral moves, and those serve a purpose. Your value to the company is understanding how it makes money, how it loses money, understanding the business. And in every one of those lateral roles, you'll learn something else about how the company you're working for operates. And so the next role, whether it's lateral or up, you can apply that knowledge at the next level to help the company succeed, which will help you succeed. So remember, a path is not straight and it has a lot of twists and turns. So don't become discouraged by that. That's part of the process. And in the end, if you embrace all those shifts and twists and turns, you'll have a wonderful career wherever that is. So accept it and embrace it.